The day he told me to pack my bags, my husband, Liam, stood on the massive front porch of his house. The house we bought together. The house I decorated. And he looked down at me like I was dirt. "You have 48 hours, Clara. Don't make a scene. You're not getting a dime more than the settlement offers." He thought he was burying me. He thought I'd be crawling back, begging for mercy, for maintenance, for a piece of the life we'd built. He watched me drive away, smug and victorious, bathed in the morning sun that perfectly illuminated his enormous Tuscan-style villa. But here's the thing about being thrown away. It makes you realize what you're capable of. I promised myself I would never beg, and months later, I came back. I didn't knock on his door. I quietly bought the only available property in the neighborhood, the empty lot right next door. And then I built. I built the house of my dreams, brick by brick, taller, sleeker, more modern than his old-world palace. And I engineered it perfectly so that every single morning, as the sun rose, the towering frame of my triumphant new life cast a cool, undeniable shadow directly over the mansion he thought was his sanctuary. He wanted me out of his life. I became the shadow he couldn't escape. Hello, everyone. My name is Clara, and I'm 31 years old. I want to share a very personal story about what happens when you decide to turn profound disrespect into extraordinary achievement. This isn't just a story about a bad divorce. It's about power, validation, and the sheer stunning joy of silent revenge. If you've ever been in a situation where someone made you feel small, disposable, or powerless, where they treated your devotion like a weakness, then you know that hollow, burning ache for justice. You want them to understand the pain they inflicted. But sometimes the best revenge isn't a screamed word or a dramatic fight. Sometimes it's just the visible proof that their choice to lose you was the single biggest mistake of their lives. My revenge was quiet. It was physical. It was made of glass, steel, and concrete. If you've ever felt underestimated, if you've ever been pushed to your limit and found a strength you didn't know you had, I need you to hit that like button, subscribe, and settle in. This is the story of how I built the most satisfying shadow in the world. So, let's begin. I met Liam when I was 23. He was 35, already a successful real estate developer. He was charismatic, dominant, and financially secure. He was everything my younger self thought I wanted: stability, luxury, and a sense of being protected. I was a driven graphic designer, creative and ambitious. But Liam quickly transitioned me into being his partner in all things social. He wanted me to host his parties, manage his properties, and curate the perfect image of a powerful man with a beautiful, attentive wife. I gave up my design career, convincing myself I was contributing to our legacy. Liam was never abusive in the stereotypical way, but he was a master of emotional control and disrespect. His currency was money, and he used it to ensure I was always dependent on him. He built the massive, beautiful home in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, a sprawling, traditional Tuscan villa, all heavy columns and terracotta tile. He loved telling people, "Clara just manages the staff and the decor. I built the empire." Every time he introduced me that way, I felt a piece of my spirit shrivel. It was a constant reminder that I was the ornament, not the architect. The disrespect escalated slowly. He started calling me flighty when I talked about design ideas, and simple when I suggested business ventures. He'd make financial decisions without consulting me, leaving me without access to cash for weeks at a time, just to remind me who was in charge. The worst part was his constant underestimation. He genuinely believed that without his structure, his money, and his direction, I was functionally useless. "You're too soft for the real world, Clara. Stick to ordering flowers. You don't have the killer instinct." That phrase, "you don't have the killer instinct," lodged itself in my mind like a shard of glass. Then came the infidelity. It wasn't a sudden discovery. It was months of late nights, cold beds, and vague excuses. When I finally confronted him, the argument wasn't about love or pain. It was about control. "Don't you dare question me, Clara," he roared, his face tight with controlled rage. "You're financially covered. You have this beautiful life. What more do you want? I provide everything, everything." His mistress was a young associate from his firm, another woman he could mold and control. When I demanded a divorce, thinking he would fight for the life we had, he simply shrugged. "Fine. It's cheaper this way. Pack your things. Get out." He literally kicked me out of the home we had shared for 7 years, changing the locks the second my car pulled out of the driveway. He wanted me to feel utterly displaced and dependent. I drove away that morning, my hands shaking so hard I had to grip the steering wheel with all my might. I had one suitcase and the few $1,000s I had secretly managed to save over the years. I checked into a cheap, nondescript hotel room. I didn't cry for the first 24 hours. I was in shock. Then the realization hit me. I was homeless and almost broke, and it was all because I had outsourced my self-worth to a man who thought I was a pretty accessory. The tears finally came, a torrent of raw, ugly, gut-wrenching grief. But the grief wasn't just for the marriage. It was for the lost years, for the career I abandoned, for the person I let him turn me into. I curled up on that cheap motel floor and felt the profound physical ache of having my future stolen. It was in that moment of absolute rock-bottom despair that the killer instinct Liam denied me finally ignited. It wasn't a fire of rage. It was a cold, pure flame of resolve. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and whispered a promise to myself. I will never beg. Never again will I give a man the power to determine my living space, my financial security, or my worth. My first move was to consult the lawyer I had quietly retained weeks before. I asked about my settlement, but my eyes were on something else. The neighborhood? Our mansion sat on a double lot, but next to it, completely hidden from view by a thick hedge and some old, overgrown trees, was a narrow, undeveloped strip of land. It was the only available plot left in the entire exclusive development. I asked my lawyer to pull the zoning maps and property records. My heart started to beat in a slow, steady rhythm for the first time in months. The adjoining lot was just big enough, and crucially, it had been listed for sale quietly for years, overlooked because it was awkwardly shaped and seemed too small to build anything truly grand. Liam, the real estate developer, hadn't bought it because he thought it was worthless, just like he thought I was. That was the turning point. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the location. It was about a declaration. I knew exactly what I had to do. I went back to work. Hard. I pulled out my dusty design portfolio and hit the ground running. I didn't start with pretty logos. I started with gritty, high-paying corporate contracts. I didn't sleep much. My focus was laser sharp. Money for the land. I sold the few valuable pieces of jewelry Liam had given me. Jewelry that represented my gilded cage, and poured every single dime into my business. I worked in that tiny hotel room, turning my fear into energy. 6 months later, through a silent, third-party holding company, and with my lawyer's help, I made the purchase. The lot next door to Liam's Tuscan villa was mine. Liam had no idea. He was too busy entertaining his new mistress and playing the victim in the divorce proceedings, certain I was languishing somewhere far away. The paperwork was intentionally opaque, and the neighborhood association was managed by an old friend of mine who owed me a favor. The design phase was my most powerful therapy. Liam's house was old world, heavy and ornate, a symbol of suffocating traditional power. My house had to be its antithesis. I designed a 3-story, ultra-modern structure. Glass, steel, and sharp, clean lines. It was minimal, brutalist, and unapologetically vertical. Where Liam's house sprawled, mine soared. The key design element was the positioning. I worked meticulously with the architect, studying sun angles and property line regulations. I specifically designed the house to be the maximum allowable height, with a strategically placed third-floor sun deck and balcony. The goal wasn't just to be tall. The goal was to block the glorious, unimpeded morning sunlight Liam loved so much from reaching his property line, particularly his favorite spot, his breakfast nook and the porch where he had kicked me out. My internal monologue during that period was a constant mantra. Every inch taller is an inch of my life I'm taking back. Every pane of glass is transparency where he only offered lies. He wanted me to live in the dark. Now he'll know what that feels like. The construction phase was a chaotic symphony, and Liam was utterly oblivious. The property was shielded by the old, thick hedge, rarely home during the day, and when he was focused on his own life. But as the steel frame went up, towering above the old hedge, the curiosity began. I had neighbors whispering, taking pictures. They knew the lot was tiny. They were astounded by the height. The day the construction crew finally removed the ancient hedge was the day the world and Liam saw the monument to my resolve. I wasn't there for the initial moment, but I heard the story from my contractor. Liam was hosting a small, intimate brunch for his colleagues and Julia, his mistress. They were sitting on his sun-drenched terrace, enjoying their mimosas. Then, a sudden, inexplicable shade fell over the table. Liam looked up. What he saw was the skeletal structure of my ultra-modern 3-story fortress, already casting a powerful, geometric shadow over his sprawling terracotta roof and his party. It was a silhouette of triumph against the clear blue sky. The contractor said Liam's face went from confusion to utter, sputtering fury. He stood up and pointed, shouting, "What in God's name is that? That's illegal. That's too tall. This is a violation." But it wasn't. It was perfectly, legally, and beautifully built. He, the experienced developer, had missed the one loophole, the one tiny strip of land, the one opportunity that I, the flighty former wife, had seized. It took another 4 months to complete the interior. My beautiful, minimal, light-filled haven. Moving day was quiet. I instructed the movers to park around the back and keep the music low. I wanted the full impact to be passive, not performative. My revenge didn't need a confrontation, it needed proximity. The first morning I woke up in my new home, I walked up to my third-floor balcony, a space designed purely for contemplation and sun worship. It had a commanding view, not only of the city skyline, but also, inescapably, of Liam's entire property. I made myself a perfect, strong espresso. The air was cool. The sun was just peeking over the horizon. I watched it rise. And as the sun climbed higher, casting its rays across the neighborhood, the towering frame of my new house did exactly what it was designed to do. It created a massive, ever-lengthening shadow. That shadow stretched like a black, silent judgment. It fell first on Liam's sprawling porch, then crawled across his carefully manicured lawn, and finally settled squarely over his breakfast nook, plunging his entire front area into a cool, symbolic gloom. He was hosting a party that weekend. I didn't invite myself. I didn't even acknowledge it. From my balcony, sipping my coffee, I heard the party noise, the high-pitched laughter of his colleagues, the clinking of glasses. And then I heard the inevitable, hushed conversation. Wait, isn't that Liam's ex-wife's house? The new one? It is. She built it. Can you believe the height? It's beautiful, but it completely overshadows his place. Well, it certainly changes the lighting around here, doesn't it? The irony was palpable. The home of the woman he'd casually thrown away now literally loomed above his, a constant, physical reminder of her resilience. I didn't need to speak a single word. My house spoke for me. It said, "You thought you destroyed me. You thought I was helpless. I am here now, and I am bigger, better, and brighter than anything you have left." Liam was enraged. He called his lawyer, he called the association, he looked for any angle, but I was airtight. He couldn't stop the shadow. He couldn't escape the daily, visual evidence of my triumph. Liam was enraged. He called his lawyer, he called the association, he looked for any angle, but I was airtight. He couldn't stop the shadow. He couldn't escape the daily visual evidence of my triumph. The payoff wasn't his collapse. It was my validation. It was the perfect silence as I watched the sunrise, knowing I was in control of my own light and that he would forever be reminded of the woman he underestimated. Every time he looked out his window into the permanent shade of my success. The divorce was finalized shortly after I moved in. Liam was desperate to sell his house, but funny enough, it was difficult to move a property that was constantly in the shadow of a stunning, modern masterpiece owned by his famously scorned ex-wife. The market value, I heard, took a significant hit. My life completely changed. I rediscovered my passion for design, but now I apply it to building my own empire. I realized that my talent wasn't just for arranging furniture. It was for creating space. Space for myself, space for my ambition, and space for growth. People often ask if I regret spending so much money just to spite him. No, I see it differently. I didn't spend the money on revenge. I invested it in my peace. I invested it in a permanent, tangible monument to my resilience. Every time I walk up to my balcony, I'm not just looking down at Liam. I'm looking back at the woman I used to be, the one who was afraid and small, and I'm thanking her for refusing to break. The real lesson here isn't just about getting even. It's about realizing that the people who underestimate you give you a profound gift, the opportunity to utterly shock them with your strength. If someone treats you like you are small, don't waste time arguing with them. Go out and build something so spectacular that they have no choice but to look up at you for the rest of their lives. If you felt that surge of satisfaction, that craving for justice, as you heard this story, then you know exactly what it feels like to reclaim your power. Don't forget to smash that like button if this story resonated with you. And please subscribe for more stories of resilience, unexpected victory, and sweet, sweet payback. I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what is the most profound, nonverbal way you've ever seen someone prove their worth after being underestimated? Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Thank you for listening. And always remember, your worth is not negotiable, and your success is the best answer to their disrespect.